Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the podcast where a real statistics professor
and the Rocky to his Bullwinkle, Jake,
gives you sports betting tips. I'm Professor Sides. You can follow me and find all my picks on Twitter at Professor Sides. You can follow my friend Jake on Twitter at myfriend_Jake. Today is Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, and this episode covers today's best college basketball bets. In case you're new here, I built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread and total should be for every Division I college basketball game. That information, along with a graded A, B, or C pick for each of today's games not covered in this episode, is available in the Google Sheet linked in the show's description. A picks are the ones I love, B picks are the ones I like, and C picks are the leans. However, please remember that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say the model will be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Jake, yesterday the model, 2 games above 500, down about half a unit. So we're kind of hanging in there on the model picks this week. Hopefully we can get that rolling today. What is one thing to know before we get started?
Keep an eye on these conference standings. There's a lot teams can play for. Like the top of the SEC is crazy right now. The Big East, the battle to get an extra day of rest is big, with like the difference between being 5th and 6th is an extra day off. So there's a lot of different conferences that are finishing up with 1 or 2 games left, and that makes a big difference. I'm going to sneak a second one in here for you.
All right.
Arizona and Duke, the way they played last night, they look national title contenders. I was blown away by Arizona because USC is a really good defensive team, and they made them look foolish at every step of the way. And Duke right now is just on a different level. They ran through a terrible Pittsburgh team, but they could have won that game by 40 if they wanted to. But those two teams are something to keep an eye on. They might be peaking right at the right time.
Yep, both those teams look really good. And then Baylor, the resurgence of them after them looking, being down a little bit, all the injuries. If they actually get Cryer back, we have a couple teams that are starting to look pretty good. And of course, Gonzaga's really good. So it kind of looked for a while like it was more of a 1-horse, 2-horse race. And now it's like, now there's a bunch of other teams playing really well right now. So yeah, a lot to be excited for here as the month rolls along. Before we get to today's slate reminder, please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Subscribe or follow if you aren't yet. It's the only way to ensure you don't miss any of the content. Share with a friend if you know others in the game, and drop a comment if you're on YouTube or Twitter. We love those and try to respond to as many as we can. We're going to get rolling today with Xavier at St. John's, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central. Xavier is a 2-point dog. I've got a B pick on Xavier. The model thinks it should be pretty close to a pick 'em. I'll point out that Xavier has not been that good to us this season, but I think the numbers finally caught up to them. I think there's value if you take the 2 points, or if you want some small plus odds on the money line. I think that's a smart investment. If you saw this Google Sheet yesterday, maybe you grabbed that 155.5 that was out there early. And if you did, kudos to you. That's got some value now that the total is down to 154. Jake, my question for you, can St. John's win at home, or does Xavier go and get the road victory?
I'm leaning Xavier, and it's probably going to burn me, but this is a big game for Big East standings, avoiding the top, which team you don't want to play. This helps by winning this. But I mean, St. John's started this little losing streak for Xavier, but I think they break out of it. They've been playing better as it goes on, and Posh Alexander is so inconsistent, and he's really the key piece to this team. I mean, everybody knows about Julian Champagnie. He'll be the best player on the floor tonight. There's no doubt of that. But it's easy to make him inefficient. If Posh Alexander isn't on his game, like quarterbacking the offense and making everything go, then St. John's really gets inefficient and doesn't score well. So I really think that's a big piece of this. I think if he has an off night, and then if Xavier's guards can get the ball to Nunge, and Nunge can hit a few outside shots and spread the floor a little bit, I think Xavier pulls a win out. And even if he doesn't hit some of those outside shots, I think his presence on the inside will be a big factor, along with Fremantle, who's playing better of late. So I think Xavier gets this, because if you look at the last matchup, I know they lost by 13, but they shot 20% from 3 when they averaged closer to 34%. So that's 2 or 3 threes go their way, and you get a much closer game, and I think that's what you see here.
Yep. So Jake and I both on Xavier there in that earlier tip-off slot. Another Big East game, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. UConn is a 4-point road favorite at Creighton. I've got a B pick on UConn -4. I think it should be closer to 5. Creighton, a really tough place to play. So that's something that you can't ignore. It's definitely the reason why I think you have to. You can't be overly confident in UConn because of that. Anytime you're going to Creighton, but I think the line should be more like 5 or 6. That makes a lot more sense. Just to note again, if you saw the Google sheet yesterday, maybe you grabbed over 134.5. Again, if you did so, kudos to you, as that total is up to 136 already. Jake, are you with me here in that UConn can cover the short number on the road?
Yeah. I really like this UConn team. They seem to be putting it together. It's a big game. It's an important game for them because they can lock in third place here with a win. And also, Creighton just lost probably their most dynamic guard in Nemhard for the season. I forget. He did something to his wrist. I think he broke it. I don't know for sure. But so they really don't have a replacement for him. They're kind of thin on the bench there. So I think the way UConn playing right now, the defense they have, RJ Cole is really, really good. And so Gongo and Akak are a 1-2 combo that can counteract the big guys for Creighton. And I really think UConn is the much better team here. They hit the free throws, they shoot the ball well. I think they just didn't get enough. They had a little rough start. And remember, this is the same team that beat Auburn early in the year. So they've got a really good squad here. They went through a rough patch, but I think they're coming out of it.
Yep, and every time someone brings up that UConn Auburn game, I kind of completely forget that happened because it feels like ages ago. But speaking of Auburn, it's the next team we're going to talk about here, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. They're a 3.5-point road favorite at Mississippi State. Interesting game here to see if Auburn can solve some of their road woes that we've long documented here, costing them a little bit in the SEC standings. I've got an under pick. The model thinks the total should be a little bit under 140. So I'm taking under 140.5. It's a B pick because I was able to get minus 105 on that. Otherwise, if you're at minus 110, I'd really be hoping to get under 141 for that extra little bit of confidence. Not a lot of value here in total discrepancies. Once it gets to a plus expected value play, all my totals tend to hit about the same, might be a little bit better, but not a ton better on those bigger edges. So even though it's a small edge here, I think it's still worth playing. Instead, I found that these 1-point edges, discrepancies, in general, not that much different than the 5 or 6 point ones. And so I still think there's value here on the under. I think it's too many points there for the total. Jake, can Auburn go on the road and win by more than the 3 points?
Yeah, I think they do. This Mississippi State team's kind of struggling right now, and they have 0 outside shooting. They're one of the worst, ranking in above 300 and 3-point percentage and three-pointers made. They make less than 5 a game, and in their last game they shot 11% from beyond the arc. It's not going to get it done anywhere, and you really got to be able to score to keep up with this Auburn team, and they're just not going to be able to. They're not good enough on defense to slow them down. They don't have a great matchup for Jabari Smith, but the real key to this game is the fact that, one, since Mississippi State doesn't shoot the ball well, that means Walker Kessler can hang out and do what he does best, leading. If he's not leading the nation, he's in the top 5 in block shots. I know he's leading the SEC. And so that makes it really tough to score. If you're not hitting jump shots, you've got a really great shot blocker down there. I'm not exactly sure where Mississippi State gets their points. And Auburn has to have this game. I'm not sure that they have tiebreakers on any of the other top 4 teams. I know they've lost to Kentucky and Tennessee, and that's the only time they play. They lost to Arkansas, and I'm not sure if they play again or if they've already split. But so that with a 1-game lead, you lose that. They have the possibility of dropping down to 4th. So they really got to have this, and they really got to have the next one. That's very, very key for them.
Yeah, but of course, I think the other key is can they sneak some cowbells into the arena like they do in football, right? Because if you make some cowbells in that thing with a closer, that would get pretty wild, right? But yeah, it should be an interesting game there to see if, like I said, if Auburn can solve their road woes. Mississippi State, a respectable enough team, but definitely a drop in competition relative to some of the other teams that have been able to beat Auburn. And we've got one other SEC game here, same time slot, 8 p.m. Central. LSU at Arkansas. Arkansas is a 5.5-point favorite with a total of 141. Jake, I'm going to let you lead us off, and then I'm going to come behind you on this one. Jake, tell us your side here.
So I'm on Arkansas. They've won 9 straight home games. They've won 4 in a row. They're like playing at Bud Walton like going to a different country. It is nuts how crazy they are about this team. They're really one of the true basketball schools of the SEC, and they've got the best player in the SEC, I think, in JD Notae. He just went for 30 on a Kentucky team. The only thing that I've seen slow him down is foul trouble. There's not been a defense out there that he hasn't been able to solve. LSU has not won a game against the top end of the SEC standings since January 4th. Like that's what we're looking
It's
at.
a long time ago.
Almost 2 months without a win against the top end team. Arkansas hits their free throws extremely well. They're hitting around 80% in the last 3, and that's really good, especially when you're going against a really good defensive team like LSU. I think the difference is that LSU will go blank for 4 or 5 minutes, maybe have a couple of those stretches where Arkansas won't, because they've got JD Notae. They can say, give me a bucket, and that happens. And Williams, the big guy they have, who's really an X factor, drawing charges, blocking shots. He can step out, hit a 15-foot jumper, which brings big guys out, and he can beat them off the dribble because he's athletic enough. I really like this Arkansas team. They want this game so that way they can avoid whoever's in 1 seed, because they've got the tiebreaker over Tennessee right now. So that's going to be a big game for them, so they can avoid that, and I think they get it done at home.
Yeah, this game really reminds me of the LSU-Kentucky game that we talked about last week. It sets up very similar. You were on Kentucky on that one. I was on LSU. I'm on LSU again in the same setup, taking, in my opinion, too many points. It's an A pick for me on LSU, and maybe I can get just as lucky at that one where Arkansas forgets how to basketball in the last 2 minutes. But we had this 3 times last week where I had an A pick and you disagreed. I went 2-1 in those. I've learned to have to pick my spots here to go against you, right? It's like the A picks are where the line is drawn, right? If it's an A pick, I feel like I can go against you. Otherwise, I'm not going against you because it hasn't worked as well for me. The model does love LSU. I'm very nervous on this one for the exact points that you made. Arkansas's free throw shooting could be the difference maker if they're up, 4 or 5 late and it does get into a foul situation. But I'm going to trust the math here, and the model thinks that it should be Arkansas -2, and so I just think it's too many points. But I will say this is my double-double spot. I did this yesterday, and I split. I'm going to do the same thing here, and hopefully this helps you in case you're a little conflicted with an A pick for me on LSU and then Jake taking Arkansas. I'm also taking under 141. I think that is too many points in what should be a close game, a tight game. The offenses aren't awful here. LSU's is kind of shaky at times. Arkansas's got a good offense, but they have a really good defense as well. And LSU, of course, has a fantastic defense. And so I just think 141 is too many points here. So I've got an A pick on LSU. Jake disagrees with me there. If you're off put by that a little bit, I still think under 141 is a good play for you there. And we'll see who gets the victory there head to head. Which takes us to our solo Jake segment. You continue to roll here. It is incredible. I have no other words other than I just randomly pick a game to have you talk about by yourself, and you just seem to win. So we're going to see if we can keep that rolling. It won again last night. We've got Marquette and DePaul tonight, 8 p.m. Central, another game that I don't have a huge edge on the side or the total. And so I'm just going to sit back and let you tell us more or less you're picking who wins between Marquette and DePaul tonight. So what do you have for us?
Yeah, I like this Marquette team here. I know it's both teams are kind of on the slide, but they're 4-6 in their last 10 combined, and 3 of those 4 wins have come against Butler and Georgetown. So nothing to brag about there. But Marquette did win the previous matchup by 11, and that was a full-strength DePaul team with Freeman Liberty. And Justin Lewis, Marquette's best player, didn't have a great game. He was very inefficient, scored 11. So I think that changes. They hit a little more shots. Marquette is not the most efficient offense in the world, but their effective field goal percentage is way up there compared to their efficiency marks. And they're pretty decent free throw or 3-point shooting team, hitting about 35% of their threes, hitting 8 a game. So Morcell gets hot. I think Morcell will get hot. Justin Lewis will have a good game, and they'll hit their free throws because they hit them around a 75% clip. And it's just, I think they've got enough to get it done. DePaul's not got a lot to play for here, where Marquette is still itching to get that extra day off. They've got a chance there. Neither team is great defensively, and Marquette is not so much. DePaul's a little bit worse, but it's not. It's like splitting hairs there. But one thing Marquette does well though is they guard the 3-point arc. They hold teams around 30%. In their last three, they've held them closer to 29, like 29, 28 range. So I think that will eat into DePaul's guard based offense and they'll be able to come out with a win.
All right. 14-2-1 in this segment. I think the record speaks for itself for you on that one. That takes us to our overtime A plays for the week. I am 3-2 here all time, 4.5 games above 500. I've got 4 A plays for you today. The first 6 p.m. Central, Georgia Tech. I'm taking them plus 8.5 at Clemson. Neither team is that good. 8.5 seems weird. I would say Clemson's probably a little bit better. That's just a lot of points for a situation where I'm like, I don't love Georgia Tech, but I don't trust Clemson to like that big of a number. So I just think there's a lot of value there at 8.5. If this line was 6.5, I'd say sure, but 8.5 just seems like too many. At 7 p.m. Central, I've got Campbell minus 3.5 versus Presbyterian. My numbers always hit a Presbyterian. I haven't been too far off on them on the results, so I think that's interesting. It's 7-7, fading them, so I do have a little bit of bias against Presbyterian, but it hasn't really cost us much. So I like this number here, 3.5. It's not a situation where a lot of times we've gotten into trouble with Presbyterian taking 2 points against them or something like that, where the number hasn't been as favorable. Laying 3.5 is not a bad spot here so that Campbell can get the job done for us there. 9 p.m. Central, I'm taking Cal Baptist minus 13 versus Chicago State. This is a revenge spot. Cal Baptist actually lost at Chicago State earlier in the year. I do love to fade Chicago State. We are 7-5, fading them. I think Cal Baptist gets it done late at 9. And then my A-plus play of the day, we are 18-12-1 here, so getting this rolling. 7:30 p.m. Central Time, I am taking Texas A&M Corpus Christi plus 2.5 versus Nicholls State. This is a toss-up game, whether you want the points or the money line. This line makes no sense to me here. I see Nicholls State being a tiny bit better, but only enough to cancel out the home court. I do not see how they are favored at all. I think the Islanders can get it done at home.
Yeah, I really like the Cal Baptist play for Chicago State to travel halfway across the country and then be ready to play. I don't think it happens. Plus the revenge factor you made. I think Cal Baptist runs them out.
All right. And so that takes us to our buzzer beaters. I'm going to start us off here. I've got a couple. Going to focus in on the buzzer beaters that are successful, retire the ones that aren't, try to focus in, get less gimmicky, and just kind of say, here's what I like. All right. So I'm going to give you the best B-side, but I've got a tie here. I'm going to give you 2 B-sides that I really like. We're 16-14 here. Hopefully we get a couple of wins. First one, 6:30 Central, Tennessee State, -3 versus SIU Edwardsville. I'm 13-5 on Tennessee State, 6-3-1 fading SIUE. I think they can cover the field goal here. So we've done really well on these 2 teams. I like that to keep going. And then my other best B-side, I've got 6 p.m. George Mason +7 versus Davidson. Look, I really like this one. I don't believe a lot of times in, the book knows something we don't, that sort of stuff. I think that's overthinking it. I think if you actually wrote all that stuff down and you track it, I think you can be about 500 in those. I think that's a lot of recency bias, a lot of we only remember, it's hard for our brains to remember everything. So I don't buy into that. What I do buy into is the books looking at this and seeing a 24-4 team and a 14-3 team. I think the books know that this should not be a 7-point spread, but I think they bumped it up a point or 2 because they know if they make this number lower, that everybody's going to come running and backing a 24-4 team. And so I think they bumped the number up. And so I think you're getting value there. That doesn't mean that George Mason covers. I'm not saying there's no locks, there's no guarantee. But I think that people are going to look at this, look at the records and say Davidson by 10. The data doesn't back that up. Davidson's surprisingly not that much better than George Mason. I make this 5. I'm 4-3 backing George Mason, 2-1 fading Davidson, so I have no biases there. I think you grab the 7. Hope that late fouls don't kill you, but I think there's a lot of value there. And then I've got one last one for you here, some afternoon delight. We're 5-6 all time here. I'm going to double again. So I'm going to double. All right, I'm going to give you 2 picks on this one. 1 p.m. Central, Charleston Southern at UNC Asheville, tournament game. Asheville is much better. They get out big, late fouls. Help us out if needed, knowing that Charleston Southern season will end. I think they can get us over the 10 and into the 140s. So 2 picks for you here. I'm taking UNC Asheville -10, and I'm taking over 138.5. Both of those are be picks, and those are my buzzer beaters.
Yeah, love Tennessee State. I'm going to start riding with you because you've been nailing that team all year. So I'm just right around there with you, and I'm all over this UNC Asheville team. They are going to win this well more than 10, and I like the points too. But my buzzer beaters, I'm going with MTSU because they just keep putting cash in my pocket. They are like the whole saying, good teams win, great teams cover. That's MTSU. They would be a great team by any stretch there. And Charlotte is one of the worst defensive teams out there, so I think the -2 is easy to cover for them. I'm going with Seton Hall. Georgetown's got nothing to play for. They're 0-17 in the Big East. Seton Hall's got a little motivation to keep playing in their standings. They can with a little help they can still get to that extra day off. So I think they're really going to put the foot down and get this win and make it easy. And I love Notre Dame here. I'm not quite sure why it's just a 1.5. Florida State has been struggling with injuries and just can't get it together. So I really like this Notre Dame team.
Yeah, I really like this Notre Dame pick. The model is 7-1 fading Florida State and 4-1 backing Notre Dame. So I'm with you 100% on Notre Dame. There aren't many chances left to fade the Seminoles, and I'm a little sad thinking about that because at this point it's like an auto fade. The number just hasn't caught up. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm with you 100% on that Notre Dame one. And that's all we've got for you today. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Picks with the Professor. Reminder, check out that Google Sheet for picks and totals on all of today's games not covered in this show. If you haven't done so yet, click that subscribe button to get a new episode every weekday and Saturday during the college basketball season dropped right into your feed. This week, I have a scheduling conflict on Saturday. Jake did last week, so we're going to have a recorded episode again for you Saturday. But we will tune into the chat and answer any questions that you have there in the comment section of those. We will see you tomorrow. Until then, remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.